My name's Rachel Elliott. I am the tax credit project manager here at DHCD, and we will be learning about the FY27 Community Investment Tax Credit Project Open Application. Can everybody hear me fine before we go any farther?
Yes.
Yes, everybody's good? Okay, thank you. So just a quick disclaimer, this is going to be recorded and it's going to also be posted as a training resource in the DHCD website. You do not have to keep your camera on if you don't want to. But by being in this meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. Video is actually optional. Also, if you require closed captioning, there is a closed captioning function here at the bottom of the page with the little CC under the crying face or next to the smiling face. Please use that. It's very functional, and we should make sure. We will also be having all presentation will be captioned when it is posted live. Also, for question and answers, we are requesting that people do not raise their hand during the meeting, and we will do a question section at the end. There will also be a question box here that's available. We prefer questions to go into the question box so we can monitor them and keep them in order as opposed to chat function. The question and answer period, if you go to the meeting tools in the right hand corner where you see the little 9 dots, there will be a question and answer feature, and you can click the ask a question button and it will post it. Just want to make sure everybody's still on being able to follow these things. And then, 1 second. Let me check one more time to see if we need more new registrants, and then we do. Okay. And then we'll really get going. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to go from here, question and answer information. So this is how, please use the question box. And I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I will get more comfortable and less nervous as we go on. So the agenda for this morning is we're going to go over a review of the investment tax credit program and generally what it is and what it does. That's going to be led by Janine Auerbach, who is the Deputy Director of the Neighborhood Revitalization Division of Department of Housing and Community Development. We will then go through the requirements and the review process. Afterwards, I will walk you through the application on the portal. And at the end, I'll discuss how to submit the application, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So here, I would like to now invite in Janine Auerbach, who is, as I said, the Deputy Director of the Neighborhood Revitalization Division, to give the next 2 slides of the program.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to see so many people here interested in the Community Investment Tax Credit Program. To get us started, I'll provide a brief overview of the Community Investment Tax Credit Program, or CITC. Right there is great, Amber, thanks. I'll cover the basics of the program, eligibility requirements, and this year's application priorities before Rachel walks you through the application process itself. The CITC program supports Maryland nonprofits by providing tax credit allocations that help organizations raise money for revitalization projects within priority funding areas. Organizations compete for these allocations through an annual application process, which is open now, and successful applicants may receive up to $100,000 in tax credits to support projects and programs that advance community revitalization, economic development, and neighborhood improvement goals. We're not quite on the right slide. We should be on slide number 8 now. if
Gotcha.
that helps. So just to be clear, this program does not award funding to organizations. We award tax credits. CITC is a fundraising tool that can help 501c3 nonprofit organizations attract new donors, increase contributions from existing donors, and strengthen community investments. You can still stay right there where
Sorry,
the
it's
slide
rolling
you're on.
without I apologize. It's rolling without my
Okay.
head.
Donors who contribute at least $500 to an approved project may be eligible for a state tax credit equal to 50% of their contribution. So now we should be at slide 9. The application is open. There we go. Yes, the application period is officially open. Applications opened on June 2nd and must be submitted by 3 p.m. on July 14th. As with most competitive grant programs, I encourage everyone not to wait until the final day to submit. If you haven't already, make sure you're familiar with the project portal and begin gathering your required documents as soon as possible. Rachel's going to cover those details later. Next slide. Eligibility requirements. There we go. Before investing time in the application, make sure your organization meets the basic eligibility requirements. Applicants must be 501c3 nonprofit organizations serving or operating within a priority funding area. They must be in good standing with the state and have current charitable registration or exempt status. These are threshold requirements, so it's worth confirming them before you begin working on the application. Next slide. Here is a link to and a visual of the Neighborhood Revitalization Mapper. This tool allows you to determine whether your project is located in a priority funding area, a designated enough area, or a designated just community. You'll need this information for your application, so I strongly recommend checking your project's location or service area early and saving a PDF copy of your documentation of this for your records. Next slide. CITC supports a wide variety of community-based activities. As you can see, eligible projects range from housing and economic development to education, workforce training, arts and culture, and services for vulnerable populations. The common theme is that projects should contribute to stronger communities and align with the goals of neighborhood revitalization and community development. Next slide. Organizations may request up to $100,000 in tax credit allocations through this program. These fiscal year 2027 awards cover a 2-year period beginning January 1, 2027 and ending December 31st, 2028. As you develop your application, make sure your proposed activities and timeline fit within that award period. Next slide. CITC has priorities that help guide funding decisions. DHCD is looking for projects that support affordable, lovable, and just communities through strategic community-driven revitalization efforts. In the next slide, you'll see the fiscal year 2027 priorities. Because the CITC program is highly competitive, I encourage you to pay close attention to how your project aligns with one or more of these priorities. If you remember only one thing from my portion of today's presentation, let it be this slide. Priority consideration will be given to projects that increase housing opportunities, build household and generational wealth, eliminate vacant properties, create safer and more appealing public spaces, and revitalize Maryland's main streets, downtowns, and commercial corridors. I can't emphasize enough, this is the slide you need to focus on. As you prepare your application, don't assume reviewers will make the connection for you. Clearly explain how your project advances one or more of these priorities. The strongest applications make that connection easy to see. Next slide. In addition to the primary priorities, DHCD will give additional consideration to projects located in designated enough areas and designated just communities. I showed you that you'll need to use the neighborhood revitalization mapper to identify if your service area or if your project is in one of those designated areas. These designations reflect communities where targeted investment can help address long-standing barriers to opportunity and economic mobility. If your project falls within one of these areas, be sure to highlight that clearly in your application materials. That concludes the program overview portion. And now we're going to move into the nuts and bolts of the application process. Rachel will walk you through the required documents, scoring criteria, and the project portal step by step. Rachel, before you proceed, can you remind us all, since there are so many new people, when the question and answer period will be?
You were muted.
Hi. Yes, we've been having the question and answer period at the end. And also, I guess I'll reiterate right now that this meeting is being recorded and your presence in the meeting is considered consent for being recorded to the meeting. You can turn off your camera if you so choose to, so that you are not visible, and we appreciate everybody keeping not using the hand raising function. Also, in the bottom right hand corner of the Google thing, you have your little 9 dots. In there, there's a section that's to ask a question. I can't remember the name of that section. It's earlier in the thing, but it says there's a question box in there, and you can ask your questions through there. And at the end of the presentation, we'll review all of them. Thank you. But I think we can go on now.
Thanks, Rachel.
You can ask questions anytime, and we have somebody monitoring the box to make sure that all of the questions are being reviewed and not duplicated. So let me get back to my slide page. Hold on. So there's a number of things that are required for this proposal that I think partly what we also want to say is that if you are missing documents or if you're missing any pieces, your application will not be considered complete and will not be reviewed. There are a number of documents that do require board authorization. If you are unable to get them within the time frame that we require, we ask you to upload a memo stating that and with the date that you will be submitting them, because they will be followed up with. And we will expect them when you say they're going to come. We know for many people, board meetings don't happen in the summer, and we are totally aware of that, and it's fine. Just make sure we know that you didn't just skip it. So a lot of the documents we need, which you're going to be putting in your organizational upload section, I'll tell you about later, are your core primary nonprofit documents. So we're going to be looking for your articles of incorporation, any name change documents, bylaws, IRS letter of determination. The current board list that has a date on it is really important. If it's not dated, it will get sent back because we don't know what year it is. Also, we are going to be looking for, and many of you who applied for anything else through our department know about this, that we want to know that you are in good standing with the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation, and also that you have your current and your charitable registration from the Maryland Secretary of State. In the past, we've asked for a certificate of good standing. We don't ask for one anymore because those cost you money, and we can check immediately through this link your up-to-date moment. We ask you to just send us screenshots of both this, and you can also check your good standing. These links are available in multiple documents for you, and just please take a screenshot and upload that. And don't spend extra money or send in your letters. Also, we would like your current year operating budget and your most recent audit. We know that not everyone has those right away. Specifically for the application, there are only a couple extra documents that we require. And then there are some extra documents you may put in. So one thing which Janine touched on is the program and project site location map. That map, you're in the required priority funding areas, but also if you have multiple sites in different areas or some sites that are in an enough community or a just community, we really ask you, especially if it's a multi-site project, to make a map of every single one, because it helps us get a broader picture of your impact in our priority areas. The other document, which is the most complicated document we'll ever ask you to make, is the signed corporate resolution authorizing officers document. I have a set of instructions that I can send people if they request them. They're not posted right now because they're not currently compliant for the website, but they are correct if you need assistance with it. But this is very important. If you cannot get it done because your board doesn't meet, please upload a note as to when your board is meeting. If you're asking for capital money, we're going to ask for site control documents, which are also, these are all documents that can be uploaded in the application. I'll show you where to do that in the next couple slides. And I think the one thing that Gina and I keep saying is that there's a threshold requirement to even get your application for review. And I think that this is really, really important to know these things, because if it doesn't pass these requirements, we're not going to look at your application. So one, we request that all applicants who have been previously funded through DHCD, Neighborhood Revitalization, whether it's through CITC or SRP or Main Street or any of our other programs, you must be in full compliance with all of your existing awards. This includes meeting your reporting deadlines, submitting required final reports, doing your request for payments, and also specifically with CITC, having your tax credit certification requests submitted and your payment on time in the time frame we've asked, as well as your reporting. The application has to be complete with all the documentation or notification the documentation is coming. Also, the program has to be consistent with CIT's purpose and eligible projects under the regulations and guidelines. We have a program manual also available on our website, or program and policy guidelines, which you can find on the CITC homepage, which I have noted at the end, which gives more details on these. Also, once again, if you are a prior CITC awardee and have not submitted reports and certifications in the required time frame, it may negatively affect your application, and we will be reviewing all applicants against prior usage of this program. So the application scoring criteria is broad. For your budget and your budget section will be 20 points. Program design is 15 points. Your implementation plan and timeline is 20. Outcomes and impacts for 10. Fundraising capacity is 15. And reinvestment priorities will be 20 points. There are additional priority bonus points, which we have discussed. These will be applied in addition to the overall application score and will not replace your core evaluation. These are not part of the evaluation process. This is something that we do after the evaluation and review period is over. Projects that are located in enough areas may receive up to 10 points. And that actually, the reason we say may is because it depends on whether you're a part of an existing project or you're just in an area where you can engage in an existing project. Projects located in just community will receive 10 points. And projects submitted by a Main Street program, whether a Maryland Main Street or a Baltimore City Main Street program, will also receive an additional 5 points. As many of you know who've worked with us before, we're going to give you a general timeline because things are not fixed. We are ahead of schedule currently, but we can't promise that forever, ahead of our previous schedules. We're going to do our best to get it done to you as quickly as possible. As you know, the submissions are due on July 14th. We will begin the review period, first our threshold reviews and then our review teams. Every application will be reviewed by at least 2 people, and hopefully we have 10 to 12 teams of people working on them. We hope to have our recommendations by mid-fall and then make the announcements later in the fall before winter break, hopefully earlier than that, and then begin drafting and executing the agreements starting in the winter and spring. The active award period, as we said, is from January 1, 2027 through December 31st, 28. You'll probably not, if you are awarded, not get your finalized agreement at the beginning by January 1, but we are going to move as quickly as possible to get you those agreements. So now I'm going to walk you through how to do these things, how to look at the portal itself and get in there. There are many other instructional documents all over. And I just want to say, like, these are the most important things. Once you get in the portal, every section has instructions about how to do it. Please read them. Like, the small print is really important. It will help you a lot and help you be less confused about how to do that. And yes, please read all the instructions. The other thing is this portal, as you know, is a little bit older, and you need to save everything all the time. And in the top right corner, there's a save button. So if you click a box, hit save. If you upload a document, immediately hit save. If you put in any text that you're proud of, put save, because once you do that, it is now then in your application. But if you if it times out or if you change the page on accident, you'll lose everything if you don't hit save. So I also encourage you to do your narrative writing offline and cut and paste it in likewise. But remember, save, 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 save. We can't say it enough. We know this is part of our portal, one of our portal's weaknesses, but you can do this. And once again, I mentioned that if you can't complete a document, make sure you submit in writing something in the application saying why. So the first thing to do is you get to the project portal login page and you have to either go into your existing account, which you can log in here over the green box, or if you are a new user, you can go down to go down to here if you're a new user and it says new user, get started. And you just click that thing and you can set up a profile that connects you to the organization you work for or are working with if you're a grant writer. If you forgot your username, you can click that thing. Down here on the bottom right also where it says forgot username. If you're having some challenges getting in, and this is also an incredibly important email for everybody to know, we have a fabulous support team here who will get back to you as soon as possible. And nrSystemSupport.dhcd@maryland.gov. You'll see this many times through the presentation. They will help you with technical problems like your password isn't resetting, you can't seem to get your registration done. Once you set a new registration, it's going to take a day or two to get them approved because we also have a lot of people coming in. They don't start immediately, but once again, our support team tries to go through them as quickly as possible and approve your new registration. Once you have a registration, you can then begin the process. So what we ask everybody to do is before you begin an application, you have to make sure your organizational profile is up to date. Once you have a registration and you log in, you can go over onto this organizational profile page and you can click on your name, and then there's a pull down menu and you see where it says profile and you click open profile. And this is where so much of the important information that is going to be populated into your application actually lives. So once you click that open and you get into your profile, the first page is organization information. And in this is all of your technical information, including your business address, your mailing address, your EIN, your TIN, all of that, your legal name of your organization, who are your main contact people, Please make sure all of it is up to date. And once again, if there's some fields that you cannot change, send an email to NR System Support with the information you want updated, and they will be able to take care of you after that. After uploading or changing any of these informations, please click Save. Then the next page that we look at under this is the organizational uploads. Well, there's also organization members, which I did not touch on, but in there, it's who are your members. You should review them, because if there are people who have left, you should make sure that you also send a note to NR Support to say, ask to deactivate their account. The most important section though in here, well, is the organization uploads, which is where you're going to put all of those organization documents that were listed earlier. Please review every one, make sure they're all up to date for 2026. If you have something that's from 25, this includes your board list, which is very important to have updated and dated. Also, we don't require the W-9 anymore for this program, but many of our awardees, we still do require the corporate diversity addendum. We also need one for 2026. So make sure that those are up there, and you can review in there all of the pages are correct. Sometimes you put in your IRS letter, it doesn't need to be updated, but if you have a new amendment to your articles of incorporation or a name change, you should upload a new version with that connected to it. There's also on here a page for organization demographics, which is a required part of your application, but you have to fill it out over here in this section. If you see these attention boxes, it's going to tell you that you have an error of how you're filling it out. And the organization demographics looks like this. You have to make sure that these rows total 100 at the bottom, but you have all different, this is asking for the composition of your board and leadership in terms of their race and ethnicity. There is a line at the bottom that says unknown/declined to state. You can also put as much information there as you want, as long as it comes out to 100%. If this page is not filled out, it will be considered an incomplete application. So now that you've filled out everything in your organizational information profile documents, you're going to go back to your dashboard where you logged in. So to start an application, you are going to go to this bottom right-hand corner, and it's going to say My Opportunities. You want to click on the little blue here that says Community Investment Tax Credit Program. Once you click on that, you're going to get a pop-up window, and it's going to ask you if you want to start an application, and you select the button Proceed. From there, you're going to get to this dashboard, and the dashboard navigation, it'll say in your tasks, you have this open application, and it'll tell you the status of application in process, not submitted. So every time you need to access this application, when you close out and you come back in, you'll be able to find it in the My Task section of your dashboard. That way you don't need to make a new application. CITC only allows you to make one application, unlike some of our other programs, so it should be easy to locate in your My Tasks. And then when you do that, you're going to click on, it's purple because I've opened it multiple times before I made the screen cap, but you're going to click on that, and that will open you up into your application landing page. The document landing page is important for you to just know it has your key information about your application. It's called a document, even though it's your application. But this document here, the first bullet or the first circle is your document name, which is really your document identifier. And you can also use that to search for your application in the system. Under there where it says organization, that should be the name of your organization. And if you click that, it will actually take you back over to your profile. So if you need to make updates to any of your organizational documents, you can go straight from there if you don't want to go through your profile. And then also it reminds you of what your status is and to tell you that it's in process and not submitted. And this is important because in case later on, if you hit submit, but it still says not submitted, you know you have to go back and complete the submission process. The taskbar on the left also is where you're going to be navigating through all the different forms and pages of your application. These are all of your application forms are listed here in the top green circle. You have to make sure all of these are filled out. The demographics one, as I noted before, is not in this section. It gets pre-populated from another section. the one that you did previously in your organizational profile. You also are going to use this to scroll up and down. It is a scrolling taskbar. So as you get, if you are awarded an application, it'll turn up to have much more information for processing your application and your agreement. Also very important, as I said, your status options, you have to manually submit your application through this status option button. You can also withdraw your application here, but that's not required if you decide to not complete your application. But to submit the application at the end, you have to make sure you scroll down to status options and hit this button and complete the prompts. We will review that at the end as well. So the first section is the application information section. I'm not going to go through all of this. I think a lot of it is very easy to understand, but I will say I'm going to highlight a couple pieces. One, at the top, it's going to ask you to provide a short name for your project. Think carefully about how you want to, what you want to call your project. So that is, and I would say, please don't call it your community investment tax credit project. Call it the project that you are actually asking to do, so that we are able to, when we are presenting these projects, we are able to explain what it is in a few short words. Also, all of your organization information that you filled out in the other pages is going to populate here. If it doesn't look right, you can go back into your organizational profile and change it, or email our support team and ask them to change it if it's not updating the way you're not able to update it. Also in here, it asks for a brief program description. We want it to be pithy and clean, and really, like, it gives you 250 characters, but shorter is better. It doesn't have to explain everything. It just has to tell us, you know, what you're doing in like 2 sentences at the most. These get used during the review process for a lot of our conversations, and we sometimes will update them for you to make sure they really do reflect what you're applying for, so that everybody can understand it. You're also going to get a chance here there's many categories, which I'm not going to pull down. Make sure you pull down and highlight the category of what you're doing, which mimics many of those eligible project areas that Janine mentioned earlier. The other thing is there's 2 other pieces that are kind of specific here, that the program and project piece, if it's a program, which is something that's going to be happening, multiple activities at multiple sites, please select program. If it's a project, it's a single site or a single person activity. And also we have something in here that says subsequent phase. That is if you have a current CITC award now and you're applying for the same project, and it's a second phase of that currently funded program or project. That will be looked at, especially if we see applications that are exactly the same from 2 years in a row. Now we're going to get to one of the more confusing parts about the actual application process. Because this application is you're requiring for credits, then you have to raise double the amount of those credits. So the way it works is when you're going to be adding in here, you're allowed to apply for capital, operating, or both capital and operating support. On this page, you're going to enter the amount you're applying for each of them, and it's going to give you the total amount requested, and then it's going to auto-populate. It's going to multiply that number of your requests by 2, which is the amount that you have to raise to be able to allocate your tax credits. So it'll show up there. And then the number of when you do your budget, which we will I'll show you how to toggle back and forth for these pages. You're going to put in the total project cost when you finalize your budget and put it here. And so what it shows is that if you're asking for 50,000 in credits, ultimately you'd be leveraging $150,000. There are instructions here and in the site about how to do this better. Please read them. And once you get to the next page, once you get to the budget, it'll become a little more clear. This is also an application information where you're going to get to upload your maps that you make through the neighborhood revitalization mapper. There's more instructions here about if it's a capital project, it has to be physically located in a priority funding area. If it's operating, it either needs to be located in the area or serving residents within the area. You can use this little red button to add multiple maps. Some people love the mapper. I do, so make more maps for fun. Also, there is a link here to the mapper tool instructions, so you can get some more information on how to use the mapper if you haven't used it before or if it's not clear to you. So once you get to the budget page, you'll see that there's all these instructions, and this is going to populate from those numbers you put on from page 1. These numbers are going to be pre-populated, but once you finish your budget, these numbers here in this green box are going to have to match the rest of your budget. So you might have to go back to page 1. After you finish your budget and save, you might have to go back to page 1 and update those numbers so that it all matches. So the proposed budget here is, first of all, you want to complete this based on the 2-year award you're requesting. So it's a 2-year budget. We only want budgets that reflect the program or project. Please do not do your entire organizational budget. That is really important, and it happens a lot. Unless you're a very, very, very small organization and your whole budget is what you're requesting. Make the activities very clear. They can be specific. You don't have to write, you can say, staff time for 4 staff. You don't have to break down everything, because you will have a narrative portion later to do that in. In this box, this orange box, you're going to put in your request for each area, whether it's capital operating on the first one or capital in the second one. Like on the first page, it'll automatically populate it'll automatically populate double of that, the amount of contributions you have to bring in. And be certain to label it. And remember that this budget and then the narrative that follows, as well as your project descriptions, will be creating a picture of what you're doing. So it really needs to clearly show how you're going to be spending this money. Also in the budget table, you'll be able to see, first of all, when you fill things in, hit save, because it will automatically calculate this whole bottom totals row. So anytime you make a change, click save. And when you reopen the budget page, click save again, because it'll recalculate if you've made any changes. If you want to add another budget line, you can use the plus button. And also these numbers, the total sources of funds, all of these 3 boxes have to add up to what is over here on the right, which actually, looking at this, it doesn't. So we need to just make sure, like, if you're having a problem with that, you can also send a request to the NR support box. There is a budget narrative that is at the bottom that is really, really important. Please be specific. Like, what are we paying for? What is DHCD, CITC? Like, what is this? What is your budget going to do? And what are we making happen with the grant that you might get? I'm so sorry, I'm very hoarse. So in the narrative, please focus on providing explanations for the line items and what they are in the budget table. Please include the basis of cost if you have them, and they can be estimates, historical data from your organization. Like if you're saying it's 0.5 of a staff person, you can give an estimate of how much it's going to cost or how much time. And we should focus on the specific estimated or actual costs. If you have estimates, or these windows are going to cost about this much, that is what we want to see. But what we don't want is to have a long explanation of the impacts of how these monies are going to be spent or how this money works. That is for a different part of the application. The narrative is really so that we can get more details about how you plan to use this money. If you are providing, in the budget page is also where you would put your site control documents if you are applying for capital funds. The site control evidence can be uploaded here. You can upload multiple site control documents. It can be evidenced with a copy of a deed or a lease or an MOU. We will review all of these. before your award, so that if we have any issues, we can go back to you. And some of you know we've had to really, hammer out some site control documents, which is usually not on you, more on our legal requirements internally at the state. Also, if there are any zoning or building control issues or code issues, please put those in here now. It's really important because this is something that we prefer not to have as a surprise later on. It's better it won't necessarily hurt your application either, but it's good for us to know. Also, there's a section in here for other sources of funds. As up in the budget, it asks you if you have other matching funds to support these project line items. Having these matching funds are not required, but if you have them and you list them up top in the budget, please write a short narrative in here listing what these funds are and whether they are pending or committed, like if you're just in the application phase, or if they're committed, or if you've already received them. If you do have evidence of those, we would like it if you would upload it here at the bottom section. You can upload pieces as you want of evidence, and excuse me, and it does not have to be formal evidence. It can be a letter of commitment. It can be an email. It doesn't have to be specific, but there is an opportunity. This will not, likewise, this is not part of the required parts of the application, so it doesn't necessarily hurt or harm your application to not have that information. The next section is the proposal timeline, and this is important because it's part of how we are going to use to create your agreement over time so that we can track the outcomes that you are putting in here. So we require 3. This is actually an older, oh no, we did update it. We only require 3 activities. And the 3 activities for you to put in activity 1, 2, and 3, but you can put in up to 18 activities just by using this plus button. But those are 3 in addition to the grayed out ones, which are pre-populated by us and you cannot change, which is when the program starts, when the program ends, and when your final report due date is, which is actually not the 15th, it's now the 30th, but I will make sure that's changed in the system. Please make sure the descriptions are very short. They don't need to be long. This is a 2-year award, so you want to add in activities over the 2-year lifespan of the award. The activities don't have to be all 2 years. It could be a part of the award period, but the things that are going to be covered under this proposed project or program, you should add at least 3 or minimally 3 that sort of go across the lifespan of the award. And make sure you click save and make sure that they match the project, they match your proposal. In the application narrative, there are 6 narrative sections. They're each limited to 2,000 characters, which is about a half a page of text. Each section has very clear instructions for what should be included in your responses. Once again, I implore you to read these instructions carefully and respond to what is being asked. Your responses should be concise. They should be clear. Your writing, bullets are fine. It doesn't have to be, like, we are not scoring you on your grammar or your writing, the quality of your writing. We want to just know what you're doing so that we can clearly understand, and so that our reviewers, especially who not or all of them have been reviewed program CITC. All of our reviewers are people who work within DHCD, but some of them, everybody needs to be able to clearly understand what you're doing. We have changed the narrative body of the proposal significantly, and so questions A through E, we have made it so it's a little bit more like a traditional grant application, and hopefully many of you will have written proposals previously that you can use to base this on, and that you can do some cutting and pasting and editing so that you can reduce the amount of time you're writing this proposal. But we are going to be focusing on starting with your needs statement, then a straight program project description, your plan for implementation and measurable implementation activities, and then how you're going to, what are your outputs and how you're going to measure success, and then your outcomes and impacts. There are more detailed instructions about what we expect from each of these sections within the application itself. I do want to focus specifically on question F, which is the same. But what we want to talk about in here, it's really important because a big part of this program is that you have to then, once awarded credits, you have to then fundraise from private donors that are either corporate or individual, or anybody who has a Maryland tax burden. So it cannot be a grant, it cannot be from a state funding or nonprofit funding or from a foundation. It must be individual donors with a Maryland state tax liability, individual or corporate. Then you have to be able to raise double the amount of credits that you are awarded. So many of you who have had tax credits previously, you can speak about your ability or your experience using tax credits. For those of you who don't, it's important for us to understand your organization's experience with doing direct fundraising for individual and corporate donors. This is a chance for us to understand how you're using this as a strategy. Also, because this is in many ways designed to be an incentive and to help you grow your fundraising program, if you say these are our experiences, we have had this success or this success, you also have a chance in here to talk about your plan to use the credits, that we understand that with these credits, we will have new opportunities. And so this is for us to understand that you have a strategic understanding of how to do the fundraising process, whether you have or have not been successful, but you know where you want to go and you know how you want to use these tax credits. So the last part of the narrative, and as Janine said, this is going to be incredibly important. You have 5 boxes that relate to these different reinvestment priorities. We clearly want you to explain how your project addresses one or more priorities. That is going to be a key part of your application. And there's a narrative portion, which I guess I didn't put in here, that is 4,000 words long. So it is twice as long as any other section for you to clearly elucidate your connection and how your work in your project addresses the core priorities of the state of Maryland and our neighborhood revitalization department priorities. The last page is application attachments and authorization. And here you'll see all of the documents that you uploaded in your organizational upload section. If you notice that any of them are missing or the link is wrong, go to your account profile, as we showed in the beginning, and make sure they're updated there. If you have some type of a problem uploading a document, please send an email to NR System Support. Also, on this page, it asks you to upload PDFs of your temporary evidence for charitable registration and good standing, your certificate of good standing. There are links provided there to the direct websites where you can take screenshots. Please do not submit your charitable registration letter as it may be out of date already. And please don't spend your money to buy a certificate of good standing. Screenshots are preferred, actually, a screenshot of that moment. And we will check them again later. We check them continually over time throughout the award and the review process. For your corporate resolution, if you cannot complete it by the deadline, please upload a memo on this page saying when your board will be meeting to finish filling out the corporate resolution. Also, a couple notes about the corporate resolution. It is a complicated document. Please follow all of the instructions on it. Please make sure the signatures are correct. You need to have at least one board member on the corporate resolution. You can also, we encourage people to also have at least one member of your executive team, either your president and CEO or your executive director, possibly your development director, so that because this is who's going to be able to sign different documents and we want to be able to access them as well. Also, the corporate resolution is stating that you met and said that you can submit this application. And so make sure that you have some type of meeting. How it works within your bylaws, if you want to have a digital meeting, that's fine. Also, digital and electronic signatures are completely acceptable. We no longer require wet signatures on everything because we live in a digital age now, which is fine. And it doesn't have to all be done in DocuSign either. So I just want to make sure that sometimes it really becomes hard. I know because I used to apply to this program. It becomes hard to chase around all your board members to get their physical signatures. That is not required anymore. But make sure that their names are spelled correctly, their titles are current, everybody signed where they're supposed to sign, and that the name that you use on your corporate resolution should match what is in the Maryland Department on SDAT, the Department of Assessment and Taxation website, because that's what we use to write your agreement. And if it's not the same, you'll have to update your corporate resolution. Also, there's an opportunity on the same page to update any other supporting materials that you want to put in. They could be photos, they could be brochures, they could be support letters. These things will not necessarily, it will add to your application, but it won't take away if you don't have them. They are not required. Make sure after you upload any document, you click save. So as you go through each of these, click save and then continue uploading. When you get to the end of these, click save again, because this is where you are now going to submit your application. So we will do this and then we will offer questions. So at the bottom of the application attachments and authorization page, there's this little thing that says application authorization. In here, you want to insert the name of the person who is authorized to submit the application, and then you're going to click save, and you want to make sure you have their name and their title. Once you've done that, click save again. You cannot change it. You have to put all this information in click save before you change the status. Otherwise, it will disappear and it will give you an error message. So once you fill in that information, the name and the title, click save. I know I sound ridiculous saying click save over and over, but click save. And then you're going to go over, follow this nice big green arrow that's on the screen to this taskbar where it says submit the application. You're going to click submit the application. Oh, I was going to put an additional slide. And in the submit the application, you're going to get a pop-up that says, it's like a two-step pop-up to submit it. You should fill that in and hit OK, and it should submit it. If you get an error message, it will tell you where to go back within your proposal, within your application to make completion. Because if it's missing certain pages, it won't do it. Once you have quick save, it will go back to your original page, that's your document landing page, and it will say in the status, application submitted. If it doesn't say that, you need to figure out where the errors are and how to make sure your application gets submitted. Once it's submitted, it is now with us, and you cannot go back and change it again. And that's it. And you've written an application. Good luck. No, not good luck. Let's ask questions, everybody. How can I assist you?
Okay, I will read out the questions from the list. Okay, first question is, will the slides be sent out after this recording?
Yes, the slides will not be sent out. The slides will be available on our CITC page, which you can click to here. But if you go to the Community Investment Tax Credit homepage, where many of you registered for this application, the slides will be available there, as will the recording of the email. And once they are also completed, they will be available in the training section of the portal, which if you're on your page, we're right next to where on the top right, where it says your profile name, there'll be a little icon that looks kind of like a book. And if you click that, it'll pull down, there'll be a whole section of CITC training documents, and this will also be available there.
Next question is, the slide instructions about the reinvestment priority say a max of 4,000 characters, but the bottom of the text says maximum 2,000 characters, which is correct. The 2,000 one, right?
Hi, this is Brian Holtzapple chiming in. I can field this one. This was an omission in the tech. I just fixed it. It'll be picked up next. It should be 2,000 like the rest of the narratives. It's just we missed a max character setting on that last narrative box. So that has been repaired on the dev side and will get picked up by Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next is, can we write in Word first and then just copy paste later?
Absolutely.
I have a
Def-
recommendation in regards to that. Absolutely, you can do that, but I do suggest when you paste into the project portal, it's really good to right-click, paste as text. That way, it doesn't try to insert a whole lot of like HTML formatting that you don't necessarily see. It makes it cleaner. It's going to maximize your character usage, etc. So, just to make sure that the it takes it as you intend, right-click, paste as text is the preferred method.
Also, for some people who know how to use your, you can use your notepad, which will take out any formatting so that you don't have any HTML formatting as well, and it will post it in rich text is another opportunity to do that same way.
Hello.
Yeah, next, Amber.
Yes.
I apologize. I can't chat. I can't text on the. It's not allowing me to chat. Can I ask a quick question?
So there is at the bottom of the screen, you see the little nine balls right there, little buttons. In there is a chat function. I will actually scroll back to that slide.
Yes, it's not. It's not the function. It's my phone. I'm on my phone.
Oh, you're on your phone. Okay. Can you use so we have people who have been
It's okay. It's okay. I'll just email it. Thank you.
You can email the questions to me right now, or Amber can let the text function open for a minute so that you can be a part of that.
It's not working on my phone, but I'll just email it later. Thank you.
I apologize. I'm sorry. But yeah, please text me and I will make sure that I am able to give you the answers. Next question.
Yes. With the potential of not having an executed agreement until spring 2027, once executed, will you be able to submit certifications from prior months since active term starts January 27?
Potentially, yes. We discourage people from actually taking donations from earlier than when your agreement is signed, because for many different reasons, there might be issues within the agreement that postpone it. What we do is we encourage people to start marketing them and take commitments for gifts. We encourage people to start marketing the program and looking for gifts to, like, your donors to say, yeah, so I'd like to give this amount or this amount. But we do really discourage people from actually taking donations before your agreement is signed.
Okay. Next question is there a way to download a blank copy of the application so that we may preview the questions?
I can field this one. On the Forms menu, when you're in the application, that gray bar that runs down the left-hand side that you navigate your pages, below the application pages, there's a section with a heading that says Tools, and there is a button that says Print Version. You can print your application at any time, and it'll put out into a PDF all of the pages. So if you wanted a blank version, you can just hit that print version straight away even before you start filling it in.
Thank you.
I'm going to quickly respond to Christopher's question here. So the application is due on July 14th. We have written on the website, but we are going to be changing today because this was a mistake. We had written that you cannot start a new user registration after June 30th because we discourage people from doing last minute applications. We realize that that is actually not feasible or fair, but what we are saying is that the last day to initiate a new application is July 7th, and we're going to change that. But the due date is most definitely July 14th. The June 30th was just for registering as a new register. new registrant to start an application. But we will be changing that in both the program guidelines as well as on the webpage today. And I apologize for that confusion. Okay, Amber.
Okay, next question is, if we receive CITC tax credit for 2025 and 26, may we apply again and for the same project/program, or does it need to be a different project?
That's a complicated question. In the past, we had asked people to not use the same project or program, but if it's a continuing phase of a funded program, you can still apply for it. I would recommend, if you possible, changing. If you have other areas that you need support in your organization, it might be more competitive to change it. Also, despite being funded in the last couple of years, our renewed or our homing in on these reinvestment priorities might actually change that application's viability. And so I think that's something that's really important, especially for prior fundees, that we are not necessarily going to be funding the same things as we always have, because the competition is much, much higher, and the reinvestment priorities are the primary priority driver in how we're going to be reviewing applications going forward. So the answer is very possibly yes, that is fine. But I think internally it's really good for you to review and really compare it up with those priorities and make sure it still fits. Also, we have many organizations that have received tax credits for many years, and they have switched up their programs. And it hasn't been that it's been a new, I mean, sometimes it's the same 3 or 4 programs over different years, but those programs, you know, we really do want to make sure that they connect to the revitalization priorities.
Next question is, if your project is not in a just community or an enough, is there a likelihood of funding?
Yes, the priority funding area is the required location. Just enough adds an additional weighting to your application, but it does not knock you out to not be in them.
Next question is, if we are requesting operational funds, is it acceptable to add the organizational budget to the application budget totals page within the portal?
If it is, but I think it's going to make it much harder for us to assess. I mean, that would require in your budget narrative for you to also have a line item explanation of every single thing in your organizational budget. So make sure that that's it. But if you want to say it's for organizational support, possibly, or for operating support, possibly picking out the pieces of your operations, if it's your executive team or it's your marketing things, pick out a section of your operational budget that you want to highlight. You don't have to, you can put in the narrative that this is part of a larger budget, but we will be looking in the budget narrative for every item in that budget to be explained. And so I would discourage you from doing that so you don't have to do that.
I could cite an example. We have had past applications and awards where they were looking for support for a specific position or staff or a few teams of staff. And in that regard, the request would be applied to that staff position. And then any additional funds being added is what the organization would be, you know, pairing, matching, and contributing to that position. In which case you're talking about a budget line of maybe 1, as opposed to your entire organization's operation.
Right. And I will also say that, like, operating money isn't just general operating support. Operating money can be for a program or a project too. So if you want to say, you know, we are running a housing counseling program, you know, and you can put in the budget for the housing counseling program, which can include, by the way, an overhead line. It could include support for the development director and the chief of staff and the executive director, all these different positions, the CFO that support that program. So it does, you can see how it adds up to a larger picture of your operating budget, but it doesn't have to be your entire operating budget. We leave this up to you. We don't want it to be too simple. We do want it to be as simple as possible for you. That's not true. But we want to make sure we know how it's being spent. We also don't want you to go through hoops and hoops and hoops to have to explain your budget. give us what you think we need. We are not going, like, we will not pick through this, and I guarantee you we're not going to walk through every piece of it with you afterwards to make sure this is what's going on.
Okay. Next question, I'm going to combine them from the same person. Is it possible to see how previous applications were scored? And is it also possible to see past project data?
It is not possible to see how previous applications were scored. That is internal information. Also, the scoring system has changed as the application itself has changed. Previous project data, we do have somewhere available previous projects that were funded. And honestly, I don't actually know where that is.
Can I interject here, Rachel?
Absolutely.
The press releases listing the awards, I believe, should be on the DHCD website, but I want to emphasize that, as Rachel said, our scoring is different and our priorities are different. So that information may not be that informative for you.
And I also want to mention about the scoring is that these are scored by review teams that are internal teams of people within our neighborhood revitalization department. There are a lot of us, but that different people have different experiences they bring to the reviews. And then the review teams then come together and have a conversation about all of the applications and their recommendations. And then additionally, both me and Janine will then review them with additional information on top of it to make sure everything's correct. It goes through many steps. There are a couple very consistent eyes. There's some very, like different people within we try to make sure we match up people who are both project managers as well as different parts of our program administration so that we have different eyes on all of the proposals. And then we have some consistent views. We do have the scoring rubric is a sheet that we use point system, and we do some math things, and we use fund tables in Excel to make it all make sense. But everybody gets both sort of a technical look and a personal look of all their applications.
Okay, next question is, can you please go over the board resolution info again about not needing all board members to sign?
Oh, yes. You don't need all your board members to sign. You need the part of the resolution does two things. It's called the corporate resolution. The corporate resolution says your board approves that you're submitting this application. So you should have some type of board meeting. It can be done at a technical in-person board meeting. If you have something in your bylaws that indicates that you can have online meetings, which many people do now, or you can have an email meeting, you can use that. But it needs to say that you have a certain amount of, your board has approved the submission of this application, and that y'all aren't going rogue, submitting applications willy-nilly without your board knowing. That's what the date is in the second paragraph. And then you have to have at least 2 signatories, which are the lines at the bottom of the page. And in the signatories, part of that is that we need to know 2 people can sign it in case one person's not available. You could have 10 signatories. It really, 2 is the minimum. One of those must be a board member with a board position. That is the only requirement. We don't have to have every board member sign. We would probably discourage that because that takes a lot of time for you. You can have a couple board members on it. I also really, really encourage you to have at least one executive team member so that because you are going to be getting the notifications in your email about what needs to be signed. And so we encourage that if you have an approved executive director, development director, or chief of staff, COO, whatever, to sign, that you also have at least one of those in there. You can put as many as you want in, but it does not have to be your whole board. Please don't do that to yourself. That is cruel. Not that your board is bad. I'm just saying, you don't have to track everybody down.
Next question is, can you review timeline for semi-annual reporting if you were awarded?
Yes, so we have changed this reporting. So there's 4 reports that are due. There's one due July 30th of the first year, so that'd be July 30th, 2027, which will review from your January to June 30th quarter, or not quarter, semi-annual report. So you have the first 6 months, and then you have 30 days to submit that report. It used to be 10, it's now 30. We decided that we really wanted to make sure the certification portion of this is more important. I will get to that in 1 second. There will be another one due on January 30th of 2008 for the second, for July through December of 2007. And then for January 1 through June of 2008, there will be a report due on July 30th of 2028. And then there will be a final report due in January of, I am like so many years in my head, 2029. Your final report will be due on January 30th. These are really important that you get these. We made the timeline much longer because compliance is extremely important to us. So we don't want to have to chase you down like we have been in the past to get them in a very short 10-day time frame. So you now have 30 days to write a pretty simple semi-annual report, and there is a form in the system that we provide for that. Also, that's something we did not say, but part of the process of this is that when you raise the money, you have to submit a packet of information, which if you are awarded, we will explain to you, a packet of information to certify that donation. It must be submitted within 30 days of you receiving the donation, unless there's some form problem on our end. Like right now, we're having a problem with our current year forms. So for people who are active, we said like, it's fine. Like you don't have to make that 30-day, but this is an area of compliance that we have not been strict about in the past, but we are going to be much stricter about now, so that for all of you previous applicants, if you haven't turned in your things within 30 days, we're watching you more carefully. And going forward, there's a potential of we will not necessarily complete your certifications if they're not turned within 30 days, and it will affect your future applications. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound so scary, but we're trying to get people to really stick within the program guidelines so we can more efficiently manage it for you guys. That's really our goal.
Next question is, how many characters are allowed for filling out the priority section?
Yeah, so this was just a repetition of the previously cited error, 2,000 characters for the narrative pages. I just double checked and made sure the rest of them were set to 2,000, and they are. It was just that one that needed adjustment, so that has been corrected. So 2,000 characters, by the way, is approximately 1/2 of a full page of text. If you're drafting in Word or something, it's a pretty easy way to gauge it. If you're about halfway through a page, that's about the character limit.
I have been a grant writer for many years before I took this position, and I understand that trying to fit the character limits on a website can be a brain-breaking process, because it's like, no, you're 2 characters over, and you're like, what characters can I get rid of? I want to encourage everybody to make the part of how we rewrote the application narrative is that there should be really no repetition required in the application. And so you don't need to reiterate different sections as you go down. And especially when you get to those priorities, you don't need to reiterate your program statement, or you can say, this is what we're doing and this is how it responds to the priorities. And I think that that's just really important to notice, that like you are not required to continually, like, we are going to read your whole application, and don't waste your space if you feel like you're short on space on repeating yourself. We will have it all in one form.
Next question is, are quotes for the proposed project items needed for the application?
If you have them, that's great. You don't, if you can even say, we've received 3 quotes that say this, or we are still looking for quotes, but based on experience, we think it's going to cost this much. If you actually have a quote, put it in, especially if you're like, if you want to hire a consultant and you have consultant quotes, those are very helpful. Or if you want to buy a specific project, like a piece of a thing, and you need to bring in an outside system, or if you're saying we want to buy 800 windows, saying these are the estimates for 800 windows. That is, especially for capital, if you have some of those quotes, it really does help. Not required, but it does help us understand a little bit more, what's going on within your budget and why you're asking for these items for this much.
Next question is, it was referenced this program is highly competitive. Is there a sense of how many awardees are awarded?
So yes, there is a sense. Last year we have $1,750,000 in tax credits to allocate. We have last year received 150 applications, and we reviewed 130 applications. We made less than 70 awards, and this year we will probably be making closer between 50 and 60 awards. So, yeah. And we assume we're going to get about the same amount of applications.
Next question is, do we need to provide evidence of individual contributions with their names and amounts?
No. I mean, it's cool if you have them. Like if you know that people are coming in for tax credits and have already made commitments, it would be great if you could provide that information, but you don't have to. That is not required. But you can say, we have 5 donors who have already requested, if we get a CITC like this amount for this year, that will help. If you have an email, you have some proof, that's also great, but it's not required.
Hey, Rachel, the phrasing of the question was actually, I think, in reference to the certification process specifically, or at least that's what it was alluding to, which I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but the long and the short of it is, if awarded, yes, as the certification process of donation, you would be submitting the individual contribution details per donation as a certification form.
And that, I think, I'm just going to add one piece of information to that includes their social security number or their business EIN number, because we will then be sending this information to the Comptroller of Maryland, who will then, when they submit their taxes with this credit, are going to check on the information that we submit. And we want to make sure that we know exactly who the person is, and that they can match from the donation letter, from the certification letter we send and they submit with their taxes to what the comptroller has.
And I'm going to add on here that there will be a full training on how to process tax credits for those who are awarded.
I'm the one that asked that question, and I actually put a follow-up question in there, if you don't mind me just speaking through the microphone right now. We are a new applicant, so this is new. I'm just trying to understand, does the donor make the gift to us and we document it, or do they make a pledge and they pay their taxes and you actually pay their 50% share to us?
So this is a more complicated question, but the way it works is they make a gift to you, you receive the funds, you then work with them to develop, we have forms to get their donor information, and you submit a form with all of their required information, also a copy of their proof of donation. So it could be a copy of their check or a credit card slip or their stock donation. And then also there's a specific thank you letter that you need to submit as well to them and upload to us. We review all this information, and if it is all correct, we then send you a technical formal letter signed by Janine that says it's written to the donor, but it will be sent to you, and then you send it to the donor. They then will take that with them when they file their taxes.
Thank you.
Next Question is the purchase of property to transform into affordable housing units or the completing repair and replacements for affordable housing units within the scope of this grant fund?
Can you please repeat that again?
Oh, yes. Is the purchase of property to transform it into affordable housing units or completing repairs and replacements for affordable housing within the scope of this grant fund?
Yes, it's in the scope.
Next question is, can you talk more about provide project examples on what DHCD considers strong support of reinvestment priorities?
Do you want me to take this, Rachel?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, Janine.
Okay. I'm not prepared to provide specific examples, but I can say that number one, circle back to the priorities that we listed, the 5 priorities. Those are reinvestment activities. And number 2, we would love it if these were applications for that support and align with capital grants that we give out under our state revitalization programs. And that application round is opening June 22nd for the state revitalization programs. I don't know if that's providing enough information, but it's place-based revitalization throughout the state of Maryland. This program was developed back in 1996 as a smart growth program, which is why investments are required to be made within priority funding areas. So if you think about that kind of smart growth revitalization activity, and this is very rare operating support for nonprofits, we recognize that, and we really like that operating support to bolster and support our state revitalization program activities.
I also just want to say before the end of the call, if you were unable to put a question in the chat, please send me an email at the CITC. And I know the person who asked earlier, because it wasn't working on their phone, I'm very sorry, but I will respond to your questions if they haven't been answered already. But that email, citc.nr@maryland.gov, will reach me, and I will do my best to respond to you within 48 hours. I'm pretty good about getting back to people within less time than that. I would discourage you from calling me right now because there are so many phone calls coming in that it's hard to respond to them immediately, but I will do my best to answer all your questions within email format. If not, we can definitely have a call. I do have a few slots between now and then that are available on my on the community investment tax credits page to set up a 15-minute meeting if you feel that is required. Next question.
Next question is, does it help if you can indicate committed gifts of $500 or more that may be contingent on CITC availability?
It will be taken into consideration as part of your fundraising capacity narrative.
Okay. Next question is, do we have to reach the full amount of requested donation in order for the donating businesses to receive their tax credit?
Every gift must be, the minimum gift for tax credit is $500. So if a business, if anybody does not want to give up to $500, they will not be eligible for tax credits. It is possible, because sometimes people want to give recurring gifts or only give smaller gifts throughout the year, that you can have one donor and you can put in multiple instances of donations for one certification request. And we actually encourage that because we have a number of people who will give even larger amounts over time, and to wait until the majority of those are in. If you have a question, if you're an awardee about that, especially about the 30-day certification limit, I encourage you to email me directly and I will give you guidance on how to do that.
Okay. Next question is,
Actually, hold on, Amber. I want to say one other thing. So I have been a fundraiser for 25 years before I started working here, and I worked with CITC a lot. And once awarded, I will happily talk to people about how to do the fundraising portion of this. One of the great things is when you have a donor that's giving $250, you can say, "Hey, donor, how about you give me $500 and it won't cost you any more because you can get half in a tax credit." This is part of the beauty of this program, is it's a way to say, increase the money you give us and it's really not going to cost you anything. Because the other thing is, post-tax credit, your donor can also, for the amount that is not already credited, can also continue using their tax professionals to then get your additional federal contribution deduction. And that is something that we are not tax professionals, so we encourage people to refer to them. In the program manual or in the program policy guidelines, it's on the page, which is going to be updated today, but it does give more detailed information about how the tax credits work, how the certification process works, and also it provides some links to federal and state documents around using credits and charitable giving.
I don't understand.
You don't understand?
Oh, I took myself off mute. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I thought I was just talking to myself. I'm sorry. My initial question was, I'm new here, obviously, and I'm trying to understand actually how the program works. And so I initially thought that, based on what I read, that as an organization, let's say, for example, we were requesting 50,000, that we would need to have total contributions of up to 50,000 for us to then qualify to actually receive those tax credits. Is that, but now I'm hearing like maybe not.
No, okay, so the way it works is that you apply for an allocation of tax credits, which we hold and we distribute to your donors. You will then, but you have to raise double the amount of the tax credits. So if you apply for 50,000 in tax credits, you would have to raise $100,000 in donations.
So I am working, that's something that I will be continuously working on, and you basically do the math in the background. And that's just kind of held on to by you in the background.
Yes, kind of. I mean, that's that sort of, I encourage you to read the manual or
Okay.
the guidelines more carefully, because it does explain that. But yeah, we do keep an accounting of it through the system of how much you've given, and so that we can make sure we're not allocating more tax credits than you have available.
Right.
But I do encourage you to also keep your own spreadsheets so that you're like,
Yeah.
don't offer ones that you don't have.
The system also will have a report for you if awarded that
Yeah.
you can generate at any time to see what your current balance is for your award year as you spend down your credits. So you can keep an eye on it. We'll be keeping an eye on it as we approve credits. That number gets smaller, of course.
So then I guess what I need a little clarity on is, let's say I've requested 50, I've only made it to 75. For those businesses that had donated up to that point, do they then not receive that tax credit because I didn't fundraise enough?
No, the
Okay.
tax credits get submitted on an ongoing basis. So as soon as you get that gift in, you need to put your certification in, and they will get that certification letter right away. And even though it's a 2-year award, they will get tax credits for the year they donated. So you have 27 and 28 to make donations. If they donate in 2027, they're getting tax credits for 27. If they donate in 28, they're getting tax credits for 2028. Because it is a count, like the tax year. So quickly, so these questions are a little more complicated.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I totally understand. This program is very complicated. I think once people get into it and start using it, it doesn't sound so nuts, but it does sound nuts, kind of like, you're like, what? Because we don't give you any money. We just say, we have a pile of credits for you that you can access if you go raise money, which sounds crazy. I know, because I did it for a long time, but it does become very understandable once you really get into it and use it. So I would say think about it this way. When you're deciding how much you want to ask for, if you want to ask for 50,000 in credits, know that that's going to require you to raise $100,000 in donations from from individuals and corporations with a tax liability to get those credits. So that also includes, you cannot get money from family funds and family foundations or donor advised funds. A lot of people think, especially the donors, that those things are qualified, but they do not qualify because they are already, they've already gotten their charitable deductions. I think that we're also at, and I really do encourage people to read the manual. It does provide a lot more information. And I also suggest you just think about it in this way. Like, the idea is this will incentivize additional giving. So when you're thinking about how much you want to ask for what you need, but give yourself a push too. Meaning, think about it as this way to like, oh, I have this extra tool to increase my giving. So you kind of want it to be sort of in that intersection between what you know is completely feasible and what's a stretch that you think you're pretty sure you can do. Like, we want you to use all those tax credits. We want you to take these as this great tool. It's, you know, that you have a new tool in your pocket to get more money. And I will talk about it this way as a fundraiser, like, go get that money, use it, go out, hit those donors. And like, that's really, really important. Like, we want you to get your money. So don't ask for more than you can use, but don't ask for less than you can use. And that's another thing. We have a lot of people who come back and say like, oh, we need more, like, because you can ask for an additional allocation. Don't do that. Ask for what you think you can use. Like, ask for the whole amount. We would like to give larger gifts, larger allocations of credits to people who can use larger allocations of credits instead of going through a process of allocating additional credits. So this should be a challenge for you, a fundraising challenge. And I also work with a lot of organizations to help them work on their fundraising part of this once awarded. Because we want you guys to get your money into our communities. We are over time. And so I'm going to say we can have one more question. And then after that, I really encourage you to send any of your questions to my email and I will get back to you. And this will be posted with captions. This will be posted as a video with captions, as well as when we clean up and make sure that this PowerPoint is ADA accessible, we will get it up, posted onto the website, ideally by the end of the week.
Rachel, if I may, this is Brian.
Yeah.
There were two questions asked about the broken link to the corporate resolution template that came to our attention yesterday. We are getting that repaired ASAP. So that link at the moment is not giving you the form, but we'll take care of that ASAP. As with the repeatedly asked question about the 2,000 versus 4,000 characters, I just did fix on the dev side, but it'll be Thursday morning before that becomes visible publicly because we have to go through a whole push process. But I want all of that to say, if anybody working on this application runs into any technical questions or problems or issues, please send that email to the nrSystemSupport.dhcd@maryland.gov email address, and we can work with our programmers to get any issues resolved. Thank you very much.
So one last question, and then I wish you all luck.
Okay. The last question is, we are opening a school, so our budget is projected at beginning this September. Do we need to wait a year until we show a used and successful budget before applying?
Janine can also answer this, but my gut feeling would be yes, you should wait until you have an active project, unless you are applying specifically for seed money, which you might be post-seed money at this point. But I would say this is this is good for that. But I'd say unless I think waiting until you have even a very small track record of a budget would make your application way more competitive. Okay, that was our last question. And Amber also has kept a record of all these questions so that I will know if there's any really important ones that I need to get back to people with. Once again, email me at citc.nr@maryland.gov. If you have any programmatic questions for technical support, anytime, get in touch with nrSystemSupport.dhcd. Our tech system, our tech team, our system team is incredible. And we're all pretty responsive, and we're going to do our best. I will be out of town, by the way, for the 30th for next week. So if questions do come in, I will not necessarily get back to you right away. There are other people monitoring the CITC.NR support box, and they can they will either answer your questions or tell you that I'll get back to you when I return on, I'm like looking at a calendar that only goes through June, that following Tuesday. So that would be July 1st? No, June 30th. I'll be back in the office on June 30th. So I'll be out from the 23rd to the 30th, but that still gives you 2 whole weeks to ask me more questions. So please don't be concerned, and I'll write a very nice out of office response for you guys. But I will answer all the questions because I want you guys to win. So at that, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you who came. I know for many of you who've done this for years, the application is different. So please pay attention to that. Read all the instructions before you ask us questions. Please, please, please read all the instructions. Save early, save often, do everything offline before you put it in the application. And don't stress out about this, please. And if you've already written it, like, don't create new stuff. Just edit it so that it fits our application. Make this the least amount of work possible. Well, obviously, as much as you need, but not too much. And I hope you have a great summer afterwards. Thank you. Goodbye.